Hello, my name's Alison Cutler and I'm a Psychological Wellbeing Practitioner within IAPT HPFT. In this webinar, we'll be providing some top tips for parents to help them manage their own wellbeing while the schools are closed or are partially opened, and also while the school holidays begin. We are the IAP Service, which stands for Improving Access to Psychological Therapies. And it's staffed by therapists who are qualified in delivering cognitive behavioural therapy, sometimes referred to as CBT. It's for people who are seeking help for their psychological difficulties, and they need to be registered with the GP and be over the age of 16 years. So the key messages we want to get across for you today is parenting is exceptionally challenging at the moment and likely to put a strain on our wellbeing and relationships. And everyone's parenting and family situation is different. For instance, some people are single parent households, others have, there might be one or multiple children in your home. Sometimes childcare arrangements are split between families. People might be working from home, people might be a key worker, or you might be in a situation where you're trying to manage your children's schoolwork with your own work commitments. Or you could just be a new parent coming to terms with all the changes there. So there's not one way of parenting. People experience it in many different ways, but it is very normal to experience a range of emotions when parenting, but also that can be exacerbated during pandemics as well, because it's exceptional circumstances. So there's no right or wrong way to feel. These are very normal reactions to the current situation. So CBT can provide some useful strategies for managing during these really difficult times. And a phrase we sometimes use is, we must look after ourselves first. We can't pour from an empty cup. And what that means is we need to look after our own well-being so that we can have that inner resource to be able to cope during these challenging times, so that we've got more not only to offer ourselves but offer others too. So we often look at cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, looking at 4 different areas. It aims to help us find helpful ways of coping in difficult circumstances. So we look at 4 areas: physical feelings, emotions, behaviours and thoughts. So for instance, I have thoughts that I should be doing more with my children, or that other parents are doing better than me, or that my children are falling behind with their schoolwork, for instance. That might make me feel quite tearful or frustrated or irritable or even anxious. And then I might experience some bodily sensations like feeling on edge or having muscle tension or feeling quite fatigued. And then coupled with that, I might start finding that I'm comparing myself to other people, or I'm not sleeping very well, or my eating patterns change, or perhaps I'm worrying more. Or I'm struggling to find that balance in my life. And what CBT aims to do when we're seeing people in clinic is to try and help people break that vicious cycle. And for people with very mild symptoms of what I've just covered here, being aware of it is sometimes enough to be able to realise that we need to do something differently in order to break that vicious cycle that might otherwise maintain those symptoms. So getting a balance is really important, and a balance of different activities. So things like we all have routines that we need to achieve during the day. You know, any chores that we need to do, and the eating, and all those kind of like daily routines that we need to do, and maintaining those in a sometimes in a structured way can be really helpful for people. And sometimes we need to remember that we need to build in pleasurable things. There are times when we're very busy and very stressed that we just do the necessary and routine things, and we forget about the pleasurable things, which are really important to us and that we hold dear to our values. And so by engaging in things that we really enjoy, whether it's exercise or a hobby or interest, can be really good for our well-being. Because we can also get a sense of achievement, not only from our hobbies or interests, but also by having a structure in our day as well. And also connecting with others, having that social support can be really beneficial for our well-being, and you know, make us feel a lot better about things. Sometimes even if we can't change immediate situations, just offloading can be really helpful. So reaching out is very important. So what we suggest is maybe having an activity diary, because a schedule should be achievable and realistic, and it should include all the things that you need to do. So involve everyone in creating that schedule can be really helpful. So involve your children in home-based tasks even, which are age appropriate, and then they're on board with it, hopefully. And sometimes just, if that is a challenge for you, then sometimes building in home-based tasks which involve a bit of fun, turning it into a game, can actually work. So for instance, if you screwed up pieces of paper with all the chores on that you've got to do, and put them in a jar, and then take it in turns to take that a piece of paper out of that jar, it might explain which chore you're going to do next that day. And then hopefully by the end of that exercise, all those routine tasks will have been done, and it might have even been a bit more enjoyable because of it being a fun-based task. Having time of undivided attention, even for 15 minutes with on a one-to-one basis, can be really beneficial if at all possible. And also having time apart for adults, children and teenagers alike. We all need our space sometimes, and maybe that's our time when we have, you know, do our own hobbies or interests, or just have that quiet time to ourselves, just to calm and soothe. It's important. And this just illustrates that you could use a sweepstake type game. Maybe it could be turned into some kind of understanding of who could tidy their room, or who could tidy a certain area of the house, or do a certain task or chore within a certain time frame. That can be that could be a suggestion, not an instruction. I'd like to just spend a little bit of time talking about worries, because many people experience worries and they can be very debilitating and cause a lot of anxiety. And essentially we talk about two different types of worries. So they can be practical worries, which are usually something that we can do something about, but it might be very hard to do. Or there might be future-based worries, which we sometimes call hypothetical worries, that could happen, might happen, but equally they might not happen. And those sorts of thoughts often go round and round in our head, because they're not immediately solvable. It can be really hard to get off that worry train in some ways, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So with practical worries, the examples given here are: my child hasn't been motivated to do their work this week, my child is missing their friends, I'm shouting at my children more, we don't have a sleep routine. All of those things might be quite challenging to deal with, but actually perhaps it is possible to actually begin to work towards solving some of those problems. And what we can do is we need to identify what the problem is, and then if we can look at all the possible solutions for that particular problem, and then look at the strengths and weaknesses of all those different types of problems, and then select the one which you think is most appropriate, and then do it. And then if that one doesn't work, then at least you've got other plans that you could do, plan B, plan C, plan D, and things like that as well, that might be able to help you. And then on the other hand, there's future-based worries, and these can be really problematic because we can't immediately solve them. They're future-based. They usually begin with what if this happens, what if that happens, and they have some element of some kind of catastrophic theme to them often as well. And sometimes we can really overestimate the size of the problem and underestimate our ability to cope, even if the worst did happen. So just do bear that in mind as well. But in terms of managing those types of worries, I'll talk about that in the next slide. But first, I just want to illustrate the worry tree. So is there anything you can do about this worry right now? If yes, then plan how you're going to solve that problem using perhaps the problem-solving technique I've just mentioned. And if no, then it says here, try not to dwell on the worry and focus on the here and now. And I appreciate that's easier said than done sometimes if the thought is going round and round in our head. But one technique that you might like to try is to focus on the present by using your 5 senses. So think of things you can see, hear, taste, touch. Maybe listen out. What sounds can you hear in the room right now? What can you see? What can you hear? What can you feel? You know, even the clothes that you're wearing, are they soft? You know, the surfaces that you're sitting at. Really pay attention to the here and now, where you are. Ground yourself in the present. And sometimes when we ground ourselves in the present, we are not then thinking about those future-based worries. So that can be enough to get us off that worry train, because we know from decades of psychological research as well that trying to push the thought away, trying not to think about something, is likely to create a rebound effect where the thought comes back even stronger. So by using something which focuses on the present, on the here and now, using your 5 senses might be really beneficial and well worth a try if this resonates with you. And also learning to put things into perspective, identifying the kind of internal dialogue we've got going on inside. So if you have negative thoughts, for instance, thoughts of I'm not coping, I've got too much to do, I must complete all my tasks today, or I'm not doing enough. If you have those types of thoughts that are going on in your head, how helpful are they when we're sort of berating ourselves and it seems almost like telling ourselves off? Sometimes it can be more helpful to try and find an alternative, more helpful way of looking at things, a more compassionate way. So instead of thinking, I'm not coping, maybe try to look at it from another perspective. All things considered, I'm doing the best I can in the current situation. And if you've got too much to do, maybe have a thought of, well, I can break down some of these tasks into more manageable chunks so that it can gradually get accomplished over time. And if you do have thoughts of I must complete all my tasks today, maybe think to yourself, well, it's okay to leave some tasks and spread them out over several days, or even ask for help and support. And if you think I'm not doing enough schooling, maybe think there is no correct amount of homeschooling too. In other words, be really compassionate and kind to yourself, because these are unprecedented times and we need to be able to be kind to ourselves and realize that, you know, sometimes being good enough is good enough. So in order to help you with your self-compassion, you might like to think about some of these things. What would a kind family member or friend say to me with regard to that particular negative thought that I've just had? And what would I say to a friend or family member who I really cared about? Sometimes I find people are much harsher to themselves than they are to a really good friend. So if we start treating ourselves like our own best friend, sometimes that can be a really good starting place for dealing with some of our negative thoughts. And we could also think, what would I think about the situation if I was feeling happier or calmer? So in summary, some of the top tips we're suggesting are parenting is exceptionally challenging and might put a strain on our well-being and relationships. And just accepting that that might be the case for many of us can be enough to really calm and soothe and not put pressure on us to try to be perfect. And maybe have, so it's very normal to experience a range of emotions as well. And building in a balance and of achievable routines to suit your own family can be really beneficial, and also make us feel as though we've achieved something that day or week. Also being really kind and compassionate to ourselves and allow ourselves pauses and breaks can be very helpful. And solving practical worries by dealing with them, because once we've dealt with them, those practical worries often go away completely because there's nothing else to solve regarding it. Whereas with future-based worries, we need to use a slightly different technique that I mentioned before about focusing on the present. And if we can be really kind and compassionate towards ourselves as parents and recognise that we're doing what is manageable in that situation, then hopefully that will calm and soothe too. So if you'd like to have a look at some other resources, you're most welcome to. There's the mental health helplines, and there's the Samaritans, advice for parents and carers, and also the mental wellbeing while staying at home website. So feel welcome to access any of those. And if you need more urgent support, please reach out to NHS 111 and select option 2, 24 hours a day, they're there for you. And you'll be able to access your local crisis intervention team there. Or call the Samaritans on 116 123 for 24 hours a day support. Or you could discuss your psychological difficulties with your GP and then decide on next steps for treatment if you want more support. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. I hope it's been really helpful for you. If you'd like further support or advice, or if you'd like to make a self-referral, then please do feel welcome to use the links below that you can see on the screen now. Thank you.